The Alchemists were a group of highly intelligent mystics that banded together to create an organization devoted to the pursuit of higher knowledge. They were doctors, scientists, and engineers that devoted their lives to the search of new truth. They were led by Valentinus Monad, a doctor and archaeologist that was highly skilled in decoding ancient languages. Alongside his colleagues, he had been searching for the legend of eternal life. After years of research, he finally found a clue in Krat. There was an old tale about a celestial being that had descended to Earth after it heard the wishes of humans that they might come to know immortality. This mysterious being was thought to be a star that had become curious about humans and wished in return to meet them. Its descent to Earth was accompanied by a meteorite composed of different otherworldly substances, and this was most likely the first source of Ergo. The meteorite crashed in a land to the west of Krat, and the cosmic matter became embedded deep below the ground, continuing to grow there for centuries. The star took the form of a one-winged angel, and pilgrims would travel from afar to worship it. But when they prayed to the angel, asking it for everlasting life, they realized that its blessing of immortality was not what they had hoped for. In their anger against the angel for what it had done, they tore it apart and killed it. It's possible that this one-winged angel was the first source of the petrification disease. While we're told that it gladly shared immortality with humans, it wasn't exactly the type of immortality that they had in mind. This makes me think that people witnessed the angel turn their loved ones into Ergo. Maybe some people even got turned into carcass monsters. And while they technically did become immortal, with their souls becoming frozen and trapped inside the Ergo, this wasn't what they meant by wishing to live forever. After the angel was torn apart, the only surviving remnant of this celestial being became known as the Arm of God, and as the years passed, it would eventually fall into the hands of a mysterious group that, very much like the Alchemists, were also searching for eternal life, and they realized that this arm was the key. One of the members of this group was Philippus Paracelsus, a former alchemist that had left the organization when he decided to pursue a different path to obtaining everlasting life. It's unclear at what point in time he had been with the Alchemists, but he's described as being a legend among them, which might imply a great deal of experience and time, so there's no telling just how old he actually is. He was tasked with giving the Arm of God to the Alchemists, to observe what their brilliant minds would do with it once it was in their possession. Valentinus led the Alchemists to their discovery of the massive Ergo cavern deep beneath Krat. This crater had been the location of the falling meteorite all those centuries ago, and until the Alchemist discovery, it had remained untouched. While not immediately understanding what exactly they had found, they knew that this incandescent blue crystal was of great importance, and they set out at once to mine it. But they needed a cover to disguise their true intentions and explain their presence in the area, and also to keep the Ergo mine a secret. They ventured to the poor coastal town of Krat and made the Archbishop an offer he couldn't refuse. In return for being permitted to settle in Krat and build up their own residences, the Alchemists vowed to restore the Cathedral of St. Frangelico and promised that their presence in Krat would bring the Archbishop unimaginable wealth. He just couldn't resist their temptation of gold, and the Alchemists were gladly welcomed into the village. They made plans to build a splendid new city featuring the best and latest technologies, and they recruited the most talented technicians from other regions to join them in this new metropolis they were creating. The Alchemists needed specialists beyond their own scope of knowledge to test the potential uses of Ergo, and while the new city of Krat was being built, the Ergo mine was being drained. It was the craftsman Geppetto that first discovered that Ergo could be used as a power source to bring puppets to life. The Alchemists were pleased with his findings, and they continued to fund the new puppet technology in order to observe the powers of Ergo, and Krat became extremely wealthy extremely quickly.
Ergo is the miracle that made Krat prosper. Without Ergo, there would be no automated puppets to make Krat wealthy.
But while the Alchemists had a very public appearance in their growing control over Krat, they had covertly established a base of operations that was kept hidden from the rest of the city. The Arche Abbey was where the Alchemists conducted their secretive, unorthodox experiments. They conducted a number of different tests using the Arm of God, unaware of the irreparable disaster their actions would eventually lead to.
I know all about those alchemist cowards. hiding away on their island, growing more monstrous by the day, refusing to acknowledge either fact that they are hiding or that they are monsters.
It was through these initial experiments that they first contracted the petrification disease, and although their ranks consisted of medical experts and doctors, they were helpless in knowing how to cure it. The petrification disease would slowly paralyze the individual once contracting it. The disease would spread throughout their body, causing a frozen, stone-like transformation, eventually leading to death. But the alchemists viewed these deaths caused by the petrification disease not as a tragedy, but rather as sacrifices in the name of science, and their terrible and inhumane experiments were continued and refined over the years. It wouldn't be until one particular discovery that the alchemists realized what Ergo actually was. By dissecting a puppet that had gained self-awareness, the alchemists learned that Ergo was the frozen time and memories of those who died, the very essence of a person's soul immortalized. Using Ergo was essentially using the life of someone that had died, and sometimes their Ergo would awaken in the puppets, manifesting in very human-like ways.
We may be trapped by Ergo, but we live, we think, we love, we hate.
It's unclear how much Valentinus was involved with these Ergo studies, or if he was even aware of the extent of the experiments that were taking place in the Abbey, but he was for a fact deeply involved with the development of Krat. Valentinus and his wife Isabel were philanthropic and charitable, appearing to have a genuine interest in the well-being and improvement of the city. They were sponsors and supporters of art and culture, and they provided financial welfare to the orphans of Krat. They established the Monad Charity House, nicknamed the Rose Estate, to ensure that all children, regardless of their social status, would be able to receive exemplary care and education. Krat enjoyed developments in cutting-edge transportation, and its technology was leaps and bounds above other countries. Though it was no secret to anyone that Valentinus was largely in control of the city, he was well respected and favored by Krat citizens for all that he had done for them. It's possible that he had become so wrapped up in the organizations of Krat and planning its future that he began to drift away from the alchemists' original cause, and maybe Simon Manus, his right-hand man, had started to realize that he and Valentinus didn't appear to have the same goals anymore.
He is the most dangerous man in Krat. He spreads mayhem and death for a delusion he calls evolution.
Although the petrification disease had first been localized to the alchemists, it soon began appearing all throughout Krat. The city established a quarantine zone to try and contain it, but without fully understanding how the disease was contracted, these efforts were unable to stop its spread. A deadly outbreak of the petrification disease appeared at the Monad Charity House, an event that would later become known as the Rose Estate Incident. There were no survivors of the outbreak, and Valentinus Monad was confirmed to have mysteriously died, but his cause of death would never be discovered. The alchemists began fighting over who should serve as his successor, and Simon Manus came out the victor.
Everything changed when Simon became their leader. Oh, I thought the survivors of the exhibition would be different.
Simon was most likely the mastermind behind the Rose Estate incident, using it as a distraction to murder Valentinus and kidnap his beloved daughter Sophia, imprisoning her in the Arche Abbey, never to be seen again. Simon and Sophia had one very unusual thing in common, a gift that no one else had understood. Simon was the son of an alchemist, and his father had conducted various experiments on him during his childhood. His scarred, blind eye might have been one of the results of his father's handiwork. But when Simon started to develop the ability to read minds, his father deemed him a failure, and this rejection would forever change the course of Simon's life. From that moment on, he became determined to one day create a world free of betrayal, free of lies, and to only pursue the truth. Sophia had also developed a similar ability.
I am able to wield Ergo. They call me a listener because I can hear Ergo. I inherited the power from my mother, who hated it, called it the devil's power. So I kept it a secret that I could talk to puppets.
Although Sophia kept her gift as a listener a secret, there was one person that she confided in. While Simon believed his ability to be a curse that he could not bear, Sophia showed him otherwise.
Knowing the truth of people people's minds is a curse. I would not have been able to bear it if it weren't for Sophia. Her pure heart was a tonic for my pain. That's why I wanted her. I did.
Determined to keep her to himself, Simon imprisoned her in the Abbey, and to prevent her from ever leaving, he shackled her in a terrible existence of pain. Under Simon's leadership, the alchemists developed a new plan for Krat. Their decades of research had finally led them to understanding how the arm of God worked and what it really was. He and his followers intended to resurrect the god that was torn apart all those centuries ago, but in order to do so, they would need a massive amount of Ergo. Simon devised a plan to spread the petrification disease on a mass scale. He believed that this would be the key to evolving humanity.
We understand the petrification disease on a deeper level. The disease does not signify death. It's the process of purifying a person's essence. A purified human who overcomes the petrification disease will gain a strengthened body and a mind free of lies.
Simon had been working on an elixir that would transform humans into perfect beings. The elixir would infect the individual, granting them new abilities and untold strength. Though many alchemists died in these elixir baptisms, those that survived were changed into something that was no longer human. The true nature of the elixir was something that only the highest level alchemists were aware of. To the rest of the city, it was being advertised as a cure, and it was distributed all throughout Krat with the promise that it would annihilate the petrification disease for good. But the horrific results weren't what anyone could have imagined. For those that didn't survive the disease, their Ergo would be harvested to power the Arche Abbey's tower. The alchemists had built a device to draw Ergo to it from afar, and harnessing the Ergo's power in one location would ultimately enable them to resurrect their god. Simon grafted the arm of God on his body, and by using the tremendous amounts of Ergo that had been created from the intentional spread of the petrification disease, he would finally be resurrected as a perfect, immortal being.
Behold, this is Ergo. Is it not magnificent? Distilled immortality and a key that opens a world with no lies. A key that unlocks true evolution.
Harnessing the power of the star that had been torn apart, the awakened god called on the strength of its own kind from above. But in the end, it wouldn't be enough. Had the god had more time to manifest or maybe existed in a more complete form and not just an arm, things might have ended very differently in this story. But after the game ends, we get a very big clue that this won't be the last time we see of the being that was once a star.
It's intriguing and worth further observation.
Noted. And we'll have to get his arm back anyway.
I'm counting on it.
It was all just collateral damage so that they could observe what would happen if they gave the alchemists the arm of God. And as bad as the alchemists were, I think this makes the Eternals even worse. And I'm sure we are going to find this out for ourselves in upcoming content. I have another video in the works that delves more into what the Arm of God was and the petrification disease and Ergo, along with some other mysteries, so look forward to that. And in the meantime, if you haven't seen my other Lies of P lore videos, make sure to check those out as well. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the Alchemists, and hopefully it has enhanced your enjoyment of the game's story. And if you enjoyed this content, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more. And big special thank you to my channel members for your support: Doomsday Zen, James Flack, Twisted Bishop, Joey, Alexander Jojo, Don Decoy, Francisco Mena, Solomon, Squally, Edward Guerra, and 8apt. Thank you again for your support, and if you'd like to become a channel member, you can sign up on my homepage. We've now got a little Discord server set up. It's small, it's just a handful of us, but high quality people, so we'll be hanging out and watching the upcoming Game Awards show in December, so that'll be a lot of fun. Alright everyone, thanks for watching, and let me know your thoughts on the Alchemists, and I will see you next time. Ciao!